What is my story? How did I get to where I am today? Let's talk about it. Stay tuned for this week's episode of the Follow the Movement podcast. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Follow the Movement podcast. This is your host, Selldretti. Before we get into this week's episode, if you enjoy this podcast and you want to continue this journey with me, please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment and a review on my podcast wherever you listen to it at. It will be on my website and my social media accounts. You can find those links in the description. Without further ado, let's get into it. But this week we're going to be talking about my story and how I ended up where I am today. So a little fun fact, this was supposed to be my first episode because I was just getting into podcasting. So I wanted y'all to get to know me on a more personal level. For those of you who don't know who I am like that. But I ended up doing the episode and the mic that I had was a condenser mic. And I'm only familiar with condenser mics. I didn't know anything about dynamic mics and the specs of it. So when I played it back, the audio was kind of distorted and there was a lot of noise in the background. So I ended up just scrapping the episode all together. And I ended up doing the one about Damar Hamlin. But I did more research on dynamic mics and condenser mics and ended up getting this dynamic mic, the Shure MV7X, and it works great. So I wanted to go ahead and re-record and do this episode so y'all can get to know me on a more personal level for those of you who don't know me. So a lot of things I'm going to talk about are going to be separate episodes, but I'm going to touch on them because those are highlights in my story. So some of the things that you're going to hear are just going to be, I'm going to just touch on it, but they're going to be their whole separate episodes because they're very important, to my whole life experience. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to start from high school and work my way on. So when I got to high school around senior year, that's the year where you start to find out what I'm going to do with my future. You start to boil down, what are my plans for the future? So my junior year going into my senior year, my two choices, I boiled it down to two choices. So my two choices were to go to college and play football or go to the Army, serve in the military. The Air Force was my first choice and the Army was my second choice. So the reason why I ended up going to the military, ended up going to the Army. So the reason why I ended up going to the Army and I didn't go play football was, one, I wasn't recruited like that. I wasn't recruited by a lot of schools in high school. I played running back and linebacker in high school. And for my size, I was 5'7", about 185. When you get to the higher levels like college and especially the pros, your height, your weight, your size, all that matters for your prototypical positions. That's like a prototypical person to play that position. So as a linebacker, I wasn't really getting looks at all. And then at running back, I didn't have a lot of film playing running back because I played linebacker most of the time. So the schools that were recruiting me, I didn't get any offers from them. So that's one reason. And two, I just thought, what if I did get offers to go to college? What if I get to college and I get into an injury or something happens to me and I can't play football anymore. And then I can't, finish, go to college and get a degree because my football scholarship is gone. I can't play football anymore. So those are the things I was thinking about. So the reason why I ended up going to the military is because, one, I wanted to be independent. That was my number one thing. I wanted to get out of the house. My parents, they raised me and my brothers, they raised us well, to be self-sufficient, to be able to take care of ourselves. And I just wanted to, as soon as I turned 18, 19, I wanted to, go out and do my own thing and just live my own life and create my own legacy. So that was one thing that led me to that path. And then two, the benefits, I have a lot of family members who are in the military. So a lot of benefits that go with serving in the military. So with those two things in mind, I ended up going to the United States Army. I was going to go to the Air Force, but the wait time was so long. Like I couldn't even join. I couldn't even ship until a year after I graduated, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go ahead and go. So I ended up going to MEPS, going through that whole process, picking my job and stuff, and I ended up going into the delayed entry program the second semester of my senior year before I graduated. So when I graduated high school, I spent the whole summer getting ready to go, and then I ended up going to basic training in August of 2012. And I remember that because my mom took me to the recruiting station to get shipped off to basic training on her birthday. I left on her birthday. So, and the funny thing is, I lived in Columbus. I'm from Columbus, Georgia. So when I went to MEPS, I went to Atlanta, where the MEPS station is. And then I did basic training in Fort Benning, which is in Columbus. So when I was driving back, I saw the exit as I was on the bus going to basic training. I saw the exit that I usually get off to go home. And that was kind of like my surreal moment. Like, man, I'm really here. Like, this is really it, you know? So that was kind of interesting. So, you know, I got to 30th AG. That's where you do your in processing. And, you know, I spent about a week and a half, 2 weeks doing all that paperwork and getting shots and stuff like that. Then I went to basic training, 10 weeks, had an amazing time. And then after that, I went to Augusta. So my job that I chose was 25 November, which is a nodal network systems operator maintainer, I believe is what it's called. I know I messed that up a little bit, but I know now they're combining the jobs now. So that's what it was called before. But that's pretty much a signal job. So I was in the signal branch, and what I did was communications, maintaining communications and stuff. So everybody that has a signal related MOS goes to Fort Gordon, Georgia, which is in Augusta. That's where they do your AIT or your advanced individual training. So after basic training, I went there. I did about 5 or 6 months there. And then after that, I went to Fort Drum. So Fort Drum is in New York, for those of you who don't know. So I went on leave, and then I went to Fort Drum. My granddad, who's a retired sergeant major, he drove me to Fort Drum. And then when I first got there, I had the mindset of fast tracking. So fast tracking basically means I was trying to get promoted fast. I was trying to do everything I could because my older brother was in at the time, and he was fast tracking. You know, I heard a lot of good things about the things he was doing, and I wanted to, you know, do that. I was inspired to, you know, do all that myself. So when I first got to my unit and I met my first line supervisor, he was on the CQ desk. I believe his last name is Zuma, I believe, Andrew Zuma. I think his first name is Zuma. The last name is Zuma. But I went to him and I said, you know, I introduced myself, getting to know each other, and I told him, like, what do I have to do to fast track? You know, what do I need to do to get to the rank of E5 and E6? You know, I'm trying to do everything I can. And when I said that, he kind of looked at me like, whoa, because, you know, it's kind of rare finding a young, you know, private with that kind of mindset. So he kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me all the ropes. He taught me, you know, the rules and regulations, the things I can do to kind of stand out from my peers and whatnot. And that was kind of what I was doing when I was in my unit. So fast forward to a Friday, and this point in my life was very important because one of my battle buddies, had he not did this, his name is Dominique Stevenson. Had he not did this, I don't know where I would be right now if he didn't do this. But it was on a Friday. We was about to leave for the weekend, go to final formation, and we were sitting in the motor pool, and he went to my platoon leader, and we were just talking about football, you know, chilling, just waiting. And he went to my platoon leader and he said, hey sir, have you seen Selden's highlight tape in high school? And my platoon leader was like, no, I haven't. So he pulled it up on a laptop, and at the time you can create your own highlight tapes on this website called Huddle. So that's when Huddle just came out. So my highlight tape was still on Huddle. So he watched it and he was like, wow, Selden, you was pretty good in high school. Why didn't you go to college to play football? So he asked me that, and I told him why. Basically the same things I said previously. And he was like, you know what? I respect that. So I'm not sure if this happened that day or the next Friday, but it was on a Friday. He was heading out to formation, and then he told me to stay back. My platoon leader, he told me to stay back in the office. He shut the door and he sat down. He was like, "Hey Selden, you know, I've been thinking about the things that you were telling me earlier about, you know, why you want to join the military and stuff like that. And I know you play football." So he asked me if I knew of a school called West Point, and I told him I'm not too familiar with it, but I did have a cousin that went there, because my dad used to talk about how my cousin was accepted and stuff like that. So, you know, I had a family member that went there, but I wasn't too familiar with the school. So he was like, "Well, did you know that active duty soldiers can apply to go?" And I told him, "No, I have no idea about any of that." So he pulled up the website and he kind of got all that information about soldiers, you know, how they can apply and stuff like that. And he kind of put it in my head that, you know, I can go serve in the military as an officer, because he did ask me that. And I said, yeah, I want to become an officer at some point. And then he said, also, I can go to college and play football again while also becoming an officer at the same time. And he's like, "Are you interested?" And I told him, yeah, of course I'm interested. So from that point on, I was kind of doing a lot more than I was before to kind of stand out. And I actually, you know, started the application process like a month later. But before that, we had a PT test, and my first sergeant and my commander was out there, you know, for the PT test. And my first sergeant pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, Sel," that was my nickname, SEL, Sel. So he was like, "Hey, Sel, let me talk to you for a second." And he said, you know, I heard about, you know, you wanted to go to West Point. You know, is that something you really want to do? You really interested in that? And I said, I said, "Roger, first sergeant." And he was like, "Well, you know, that's a big step. You know, we're not just gonna, you know, just give you the support." And basically what he meant by that was I have to earn, you know, you know, what I have. I have to earn my potential. Like, I have to show them now I have the potential to be able to go to a school like that. So I was like, okay, I got you. So when I took my PT test, I got a 275. This is the highest APFT that I've ever gotten, 275. So I did that. You know, I won Soldier of the Month board a few times, and I won a couple battalion physical fitness challenges and stuff like that. So at that point, I had 100% support from my company and my chain of command. So that's when I started the application process. So my first sergeant told me about a brief that was happening on the post. It was a brief about West Point. It was a soldier admissions officer who was doing the brief. So I went to that brief, and it was only like 6 of us in there. So after the brief, I was the only one to go up to him. So I went up to him, I shook his hand, and he was like, "What's your name?" And I told him my name and introduced myself. And, you know, based on the answers I was getting, the things I was telling him and the way I was acting, he could see how motivated and how inspiring I wanted, you know, how, you know, much, you know, I wanted to take this opportunity to go. So when he saw that, he gave me his number, his email. And from that point on, I told my parents about, you know, I was applying to go to West Point. And the first person I told was my mom. And my mom was so supportive in the process. Like, she helped me because I had to take the SAT and ACT over again. I ended up taking the SAT, but she would call me every other day, making sure I was getting tutored and make sure I had, you know, all my practice questions down, and, you know, doing all this stuff every other day. And also the soldier admissions officer actually gave me a tutor to have over the phone to do virtual tutorings with. So that was very helpful. Then I ended up taking the SAT out of high school one night. And then I don't think I did too well on it, but based on the recommendation letters that I got from my chain of command, it kind of helped me with the application process, kind of show them who I am as a person and all the things I've done in the support and how much potential I really have. So I really appreciated that. So towards the end of the year, my unit was deploying. So my unit was getting ready to deploy, and I wasn't deploying because I just got there. So they were trying to deploy all the experienced people. So I already knew I wasn't deploying. But the sergeant major in our G6, his name's Sergeant Major Mullins. He retired, and he was doing these interviews with junior enlisted soldiers for a rear detachment job. So I was one of the persons he was interviewing. So I went to the interview. I was the last person to go in. I went to the interview, and he seen my last. When I walked in, he seen my last name. He was like, "Hey, aren't you Private Selden?" I said, Roger, Sergeant Major. And he said, "I heard about you. You trying to go to West Point. You know, I've heard nothing but good things about you." He was like, "Don't worry about the job. I got something better for you." He was like, "Don't worry about it." So I left, and then like a day or two later, I get to the motor pool, and I'm talking to my sergeant, my one of my squad leaders, and he was like, Hey, Selden, did you impress the sergeant major or something like that?" And I was like, I don't know. What did I do? What happened? So when I said that, he was like, "Well, you know you wasn't deploying before, but you got put on the manifest. You're deploying now." And at first I was like, man, I did not want to deploy at all. Like I wanted to stay. Like I already told my parents, like I did not want to deploy. Like I had my own personal, fears and whatnot about deploying, but I ended up telling my family and stuff like that. It ended up being the best experience I ever had. But that happened, and then right before I went on leave for block leave, Christmas leave, I went on a visit to West Point, and my cousin actually chaperoned me the whole time, so that was fun. And then I went on Christmas leave, and then about a week before I had to go back, I get a call from my battalion saying that your manifest to deploy got pushed up, so you got to hurry up and get back. So I had to leave my Christmas break early to drive all the way to Fort Drum, and then get my car in storage and do all this paperwork, my will and all that. And then about the beginning of January, like January 12th, I ended up deploying. So went to Afghanistan, got settled. I was doing my thing, doing my deployment thing. Didn't hear anything back from West Point. So about maybe like 3.5 months into my deployment, I get an email on my phone. So I had a phone on me, and in certain areas where I was, I had Wi-Fi. So I got an email from the soldier missions officer, my first sergeant, and my commander saying that I got accepted into the prep school. So when I got that email, I was preparing to go back. They were preparing me to send me to go back because I was supposed to be on deployment for about 9 months. But because I got accepted, they sent me back early. So around about 4 months into my deployment, I got sent back early. So I went back to the States, out processed, took another PT test, passed it. And then from there, I went to the prep school. So the good thing about the prep school is that the prep school is like active duty time for active duty soldiers who's going to end up going into the academy. So it was like a regular PCS move. So I went to the prep school, spent 10 months there, finished the whole year. And then I got my actual appointment to go into West Point. And then, I did my West Point time, did about 4 years. And then I graduated in 2019. And now, and before and after I graduated from West Point, I went to Bolick. I actually ended up going into the same branch I was in Signal. I ended up becoming a Signal officer. That's the branch I got. And then my first post that I got was Fort Bragg. So I ended up going to Bolick, or Basic Officer Leadership course. Ended up doing that. And then I went to Fort Bragg. The unit that I originally went to, they were so filled with lieutenants that I didn't go into my platoon leader time right away. So I had to wait. But the unit that I ended up doing my platoon leader time with, the battalion commander at that unit called the battalion commander at the unit I was currently at and was looking for a platoon leader who could be a platoon leader for his unit. And I was the one that was picked, probably because I had seniority over the other lieutenants and I had experience with being a signal soldier. So I ended up going to 18th Airborne Corps. I was there for about 1.5 years, I believe, and did my platoon leader time, and I did my XO time there. And then from there, I got picked to go into recruiting. So that's where I currently am in now. I'm a first lieutenant, about to pin on captain in a few months, and that's where I am. That's where I am right now. in recruiting. So like I said, that's my story. That's how I got to where I am today. Some of the I kind of glossed over the story a little bit. I didn't go into detail with a lot of things. Like some of the things that happened in my life, I'm gonna make completely different episodes for them so I can dive deep into them. But that's all I got. That's how I ended up where I am today. And I would not change anything at all. Like everything that happened, I feel like it happened for a reason. This is where God wants me to be. This is my path. And I'm very, very blessed of the things that I have and the opportunities that I've been able to go through and experiences I've been able to go through. And, you know, through it all, I got a beautiful wife. I got a beautiful daughter. I have a roof over my head. I have a car to drive. You know, I have, you know, I'm living comfortable, and I'm very blessed to be able to be an amazing person to people, to serve others, to be an amazing husband to my wife, and an amazing father to my daughter. And I'm very, very blessed to be in the position I am in. And I look forward to the future, and I hope that my story, even though that it wasn't in depth, which I will be in a few episodes, I hope things that I've said resonates with you and that you can relate. Maybe you going through some of the things that I talked about and vice versa. So thank y'all for listening. I will catch y'all in the next episode. Be all you can be. Stay true to who you are. And remember to follow the movement. Peace.